Supervisor Campos.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Colleagues, as you're probably aware, this past Saturday, a 5-alarm fire took place at Mission Street and 29th that led to the displacement of 58 people. It impacted 7 small businesses. I actually just came this morning from the shelter where many of the victims are staying. And it's very tragic to see this happening, and I was especially touched by my conversation with some of the victims, including Marta, who is an 89-year-old woman. Bottom line is that our community in the mission feels that we are under siege. I wish that I could say to people that the latest fire is an anomaly, but the fact is that this latest fire is the latest in a string of tragic fires that we've had over the last few years. And to be frank, this latest fire is simply too much, and we as a community in the mission have had enough. Since 2015, we've had 6 fires in the mission that have resulted in displacement. 3 people have tragically died due to those fires. 6 people have been injured, and 194 people have been displaced. It is very upsetting. And the fact is that as much as we in my office have pushed, more has to be done. The city must do more to address this all too common occurrence. The loss of life is something that we cannot accept. We have reached a point in the mission where reasonable people, not paranoid people, but reasonable people believe that arson is responsible for the various fires that are taking place. And the sad thing about that belief is that I have yet, after years of asking for information, I have yet to hear directly or get directly from the fire department the evidence that I need to tell people it wasn't arson. What we have is a fire department that is simply telling us on every fire investigation, it wasn't arson. Trust us. Again, I want to believe that. I want to say that to my residents. But we're not simply going to trust. We need verification that, in fact, the investigations have conclusively proved that there was no arson. The fire department, we have requested them to do this time and time again, needs to, once and for all, answer some critical questions. Why is there a backlog? We actually had a hearing already scheduled for next week on why it is that investigations are so far behind. And is the fire department actually asking for enough resources? And why is it that after 2 years of so many fires, we still don't have enough investigators in that fire department? Are they asking the mayor's office for the right level of staffing? Is the mayor's office denying them that staffing? What exactly is going on? I'm glad that they recently asked that 1 investigator be added to the investigations unit as part of their 2016-2017 budget. But 1 investigator, when there is such a backlog, I'm sorry, that just doesn't cut it. I'm also asking what's going on with the enforcement of codes in San Francisco. I want a clear and full examination of the building where the fire started, but I want to know throughout my district, as we see fires going down in every part of the city except for the Mission, Once again, my district wants to know what is happening in the mission. What is it about the mission that has led to this increase in fires, even as the number goes down everywhere else? And I have a direct ask of the mayor. Mr. Mayor, we, and I specifically as a member of the Board of Supervisors, cannot direct the departments that you're in charge of to take this more seriously. Only you, as the chief executive, have the power to do that. And I am asking you, Mr. Mayor, to make this a priority. How many more fires do we need to have in the mission for your administration to actually make this the priority that it should be? And let me give you an example. We have, right now as a city, no real systemic, cohesive strategy for helping people who have been displaced by fires. The city right now only has one person in the entire city that is responsible for addressing the needs of people who are displaced by fire. And that person is Ben Ames. Mr. Ames, and all of us who have worked with him, know that he is an exceptional individual. He does an incredible job. But he is one person. And so what happens, and this has happened again and again and again, and my colleagues who have had fires in their districts know this as well. When there is a fire, my office, has to drop everything to make sure that we work to find housing for these individuals. Why is it that we have to deal with this issue on an ad hoc basis? The city should make this the priority that it needs to be and actually have more than one person dedicated for this purpose. It is shameful that when I visit a fire victim, as I visited today, this 89-year-old, all I can tell her is, my staff, we're doing the best we can. But I have no way of guaranteeing housing right now to this 89-year-old woman. And why is it that after years of fire after fire, especially fires in places like the Mission, we don't have a policy that actually sets aside housing so that when a fire occurs, there's actually a place for people to go? I'm sorry, it's simply unacceptable. I want to say that one of the things that happens when you have a tragedy like a fire is that it also brings community together. And I am very grateful to the residents of the Mission neighborhood and all the neighborhoods in San Francisco that have stepped up to help. I want to thank them for their efforts, not only to help the individual victims, but to collectively, as a community, create a fund that raises resources for the needs of everyone involved. And it is sad and tragic that the city doesn't do that automatically. That community has to be the one to do it, otherwise it doesn't get done. That is not how a city should be run. That is not how we should address this issue. So with that in mind, as I noted, there is already a hearing that was scheduled for next week. I want to amend that hearing request so that there is additional information that's provided. We want the hearing that takes place next week to examine the status of fire investigations by the fire department, specifically the current status of 300 backlogged investigations. I also want to note specifically from the chief and her team what it is that they're doing to address that backlog. I also want to have a status report by the fire department on the fire that took place just recently. And I want an update on code enforcement in the Mission District. I am specifically asking the fire department, the Department of Building Inspections, and the health department, which are responsible, all three, for investigating code compliance, that they bring to this hearing specific data on their enforcement efforts in the mission. And what, if anything, have they done to address the spike in the number of fires? Again, I kindly request that this additional information be presented next week at the Neighborhood Service and Safety Committee. Now, I want to say that as we move forward as a city, there are a number of things that need to happen. One, we need to continue to push landlords to join our Good Samaritan program so that we can provide much needed housing. The city's Good Samaritan law allows landlords to rent an apartment and below market rate for a limited period of time to those residents that have been displaced by a fire. If you are a landlord, if you own property and you're willing to participate, we ask that you call 415-557-5370. I also want to put it out there that the Mission Economic Development Agency, MEDA, has agreed to receive and distribute funds to the tenants that have been displaced by Saturday's fire. Any donations to this fund are tax deductible and will go directly to the tenants. You can also donate to the small business fund set up by the Mission Bernal Heights Merchants Association, who are also raising funds for the victims. And I want to note that right now there is nothing in place where the city actually has funds available to subsidize the housing of any fire victim. We actually, in my office, started doing that last year using the discretionary funds that we have access to as supervisors, which is up to $100,000. I think it's sad and shameful that after so many fires, such a fund does not exist for the entire city. In a budget of $9 billion, almost $10 billion, why aren't we doing more? Mr. Mayor, why aren't we doing more? The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos.